Hi everybody, my name's Anastasia and I lead hardware design and technology for Indiegogo in Europe. So basically I have a really cool job. I get to work with amazing startups, cool entrepreneurs, some I can see here, like Cocoons over there, PyTop. Vernon, you hear from Microdrone? Very cool drone you'll be seeing like flying around later. So yeah, I get to work with really cool people who've invented great things and they need to bring them to market through Indiegogo. That's me if you want to get me on Twitter or email. Anyone that doesn't know Indiegogo, we are the largest global crowdfunding platform. So we've seen over 300,000 campaigns from 224 countries and territories. Every day, about 70 countries are funding actively on the platform, and we distribute millions every single week. So pretty much seen it all. And over the last kind of 2 to 5 years, hardware's really become this revolution. And we've started to see so many hardware startups coming out with their product and coming to Indiegogo, coming to crowdfunding. And so it's really shaped the way that products have been made, and not just from a startup point of view, but you see big brands, you see large companies, you see VC-backed companies coming to crowdfunding to launch their product, essentially. So this is like literally a handful of some of the startups that have gone on from running a successful campaign to actually building themselves into successful companies and raising VC money, because obviously that's what we're all here tonight for. So Jibo is the world's first human robot. They raised 2.5 million and they're on 3 million now in demand, which is our service where you can keep taking pre-sales. They raised $25 million of VC money. Muse raised a $6 million round and then last month raised a $10 million round. Scully raised 11 million. Very cool motorcycle helmet. Any motorcycle riders out there? Very cool. Canary is a home security system, and they raised 10 million, and last week they raised 30 million. Ghost Drone was the first ever campaign to actually raise VC before they finished their campaign, which was pretty cool. They raised 10 million, and Scandu Scout is straight out of Star Trek, and it's a medical tricorder. They raised, yeah, got some Star Trek lovers over there. They raised 10 million just out of their campaign, and then they raised another 35 million, I think it was 2 weeks ago. So as you can see, there's this like trend. So you run a really good campaign, you interest the VCs, and you raise a lot of money. And I think one of the things that people got worried about was that crowdfunding was going to eradicate VC, and VCs weren't going to be around, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard. That isn't what happens. In fact, the two financing systems, or angels, VCs, crowdfunding, they all work together, because crowdfunding isn't growth capital. So this is production funding. It's validating your idea. You still need to go on and raise further finance to be able to scale. And essentially that's what we're in the business of. We're in the business of building successful, sustainable businesses rather than just successful crowdfunding campaigns. Because anyone with enough resources can essentially run $1 million campaign, but having access to VCs, retailers, distributors, everything that Barbara talked about, that's what makes you different. That's what makes you be Misfit or Canary or Jibo in a couple of years' time and building sustainable businesses. And in the last 2 years, we've seen $280 million of VC money go into Indiegogo startups. That's only in the last 2 years. So it's definitely a trend that's kind of increasing. And what's interesting is that the VCs and the investors look at Indiegogo and look at crowdfunding platforms because it serves as an amazing indicator for what's coming up next. Because you have both sides of the pie. So we've lowered the barrier to entry. So people with a great idea, like back in the day, would have had to be really rich or had best friends that are investors to be able to bring that product to life. And whereas now, a small team, savvy, can figure out their prototype, bootstrap up to the point where they're ready to produce, and then they can go to crowdfunding and put their idea out to the crowd and potentially bring it to market. So on one side, you've got this lower barrier to entry where you start seeing all this amazing innovation like robots and drones and 3D printers and brainwave sensing headbands. And on the other side, you have the market, which is the crowd, like the people from all over the world. So you not only get to see what's coming up and what's cool and what's not, but you also see how the market's responding. So if the market's not ready, for example, or if the market's saturated, now if you put a fitness tracker that's like essentially a glorified step counter on Indiegogo, it won't fund. And that's because the market's moved on, it's developed, and therefore it's saturated for that exact product. And people are very much interested in form as well as functionality. So when you look at crowdfunding platforms, what they are doing, in my opinion, is mitigating the two risks that investors are worried about. The reason that hardware investors or investors weren't interested in investing in hardware previously is because it takes a huge amount of money. Like Barbara said, you need a couple of million to even get to the point to know whether it's going to be a success or not. And then you need more money to scale, and you need to figure out how you're going to access all these markets. Then you have to deal with retail and distributors. What crowdfunding does is essentially removes those two barriers. So the first one is market risk. Does anyone care what you're building? You think it's the coolest thing in the world, but is anyone going to buy it? And then fine, okay, if you've solved that problem and you know that people actually like your product, are you still going to fail because you haven't got product market fit? Like you've got the wrong price point, or you've gone after the wrong customer segment. And this happens over and over again. Like even, companies like Apple have failed at releasing products because they haven't understood the market well enough. So for me, that's really kind of what crowdfunding is about. It's not about the money. If you go into it just trying to raise loads of money, which I know everyone wants to, like I have 10 calls a day and the first thing they say is they want to raise millions, which is always fun. But it's very much about everything else. Like these are the things that you can't get from investors. Like you can't, a handful of investors isn't a representative amount of people to tell you whether your product is viable in the marketplace. They aren't going to tell you which markets are strongest for you. They're not going to be able to build this amazing community of evangelists like PyTop have or Cocoon have, of the people that are so excited that you're building this thing that they're going to tell everybody and share it on all their social media and have this amazing like word of mouth marketing. Flowhive is like the best example of this of recent date. Has anyone seen Flowhive? Okay, a couple. So who likes bees? Yeah, everyone likes bees. They're like fun and pretty and cute. I had no idea that this many people liked bees. So it was a father and son from Australia, and they'd essentially looked at the beehive and said, this is insane. Like the beehive as it is really archaic. Like you have to put a suit on and you piss off the bees and you get annoyed because they want to like sting you and you have to smoke them out, and it's like a crazy process. So they re-engineered it very, very simply. They like essentially half created the hives, and then the bees finish it off and you can see through and you can see when the hives are ready. So then you pull a lever and the honey drips out. Like it's genuinely honey on tap. It's amazing. Oh, doesn't like bees. So they launched their campaign. They needed 75,000 to manufacture. They were manufacturing in the US, and they hit the goal in 7 minutes. They raised 2.4 million in 24 hours, and they closed their campaign at 12.2 million a couple of weeks ago. This is just like a dad and a son in Australia. Like, I think we invented something cool. And they essentially they pre-sold 30,000 units. And it was to the point where I tried to buy one, and my boyfriend was like, we live above a shop in London. Like, why do you think that you're going to suddenly harvest bees? You insane woman, please do not buy one. And I was like, yeah, no, you're probably right. But my mum bought one. Again, never, ever mentioned bees. She's like, I've always wanted to have bees. I'm like, no, you haven't. But you know when you've done something right, when everybody around the world is suddenly like, I need to harvest bees. And they literally have got the most amazing amount of coverage. They can essentially do what they want now. And they wouldn't have been able to do that had they not gone directly to the crowd. So I'm going to talk through a couple of examples of essentially why people use crowdfunding aside from the money. So Muse was a brainwave sensing headband. A few years back, an amazing founder, Ariel Garten, came up with this headband which you'd be able to essentially harness your brain power and use it to relax or focus or whatever. Pretty innovative technology at that point. Add to that a female founder, which I won't make any comments about. And she couldn't raise VC money. So she was going out to VCs, having the conversation. They thought it was too risky, didn't want to invest in her. So she came to Indiegogo, proved that there was a market for this and that the market wasn't too early, that it had adoption, potential for it. And then she closed a $6 million round very, very soon afterwards. And she actually just closed another $10 million round. So in this case, from kind of a balancing perspective to level the playing field for anybody trying to raise funding, crowdfunding is the best way to do it. So going back to the female founder thing, I think it's between 8 and 12% of VC money goes into female-led startups. Over 47% of successful Indiegogo campaigns are female-led. No comment. Okay, improving your valuation. Everyone wants to do that, right? No one wants to give away equity. So Canary home security system had a $2 million term sheet on the table. Could have signed it. Terrible terms, as you can imagine, because it's, high investment, high risk. The investors weren't really sure, again, how big the market was. They were kind of deciding what to do, and they decided, let's just leave the term sheet on the table and let's see if people want it. Let's see if the customers are there. So they ran their campaign, they raised just under 2 million, and the VC actually tried to wire the money into their account, because by then they were like, oh crap, this is a really cool product and we need to get behind it. And lo and behold, they didn't take that deal, but they closed a $10 million round very, very soon afterwards. And as you can imagine, much, much friendlier terms. So if you're looking, if you have a product and, at that stage, even you don't really know what it is, like you don't know how your users are going to use it, you don't know how it's going to develop, the best thing to do is put it in front of those customers and get their feedback and talk to them. Because when you have the conversations with, whether it's VCs or you want to talk to retailers or distributors, that conversation is much, much easier once you've crowdfunded. And Misfit Shine, I'm wearing it. Anyone heard of Misfit Shine? Yeah, good. Very, very amazing team. For me, this is like the poster child of crowdfunding because of the way that Sunny Vu and his team went about it. So they'd already raised $7.4 million of VC money. They're a beautiful design-led fitness tracker. Their whole point was that you wouldn't want to wear a necklace or a bracelet, like it would be purely like design-led. You could hide it, you could clip it onto your shoe, whatever. So they came to Indiegogo because Sunny said, okay, we've got the money, we have the product, but I want to make sure that I'm building a product that people want, that really, really, really want. And he wanted their feedback. So he launched the campaign purely for market research, purely to get feedback and use that to iterate on the product. Through his campaign, he did really well, raised like just under $900,000, which is a good amount of money. Obviously nothing compared to the $7+ million that he'd already had in the bank. But through his campaign, he got funders from 65 countries. So he created a very strong international marketing strategy from the get-go. And now they still sell more outside the US than inside, even though they're a Silicon Valley company. They walked their price point up. So they started selling at $49 and then they walked it up to $79. So they got their RRP price of $99, which is what it sold at when it first launched. They realized that people would pay $50 more for a black version. And the best one was that, because it was so design-led, they decided to not launch with a bracelet or any accessories. They just had this clip, and they'd spent 6 months developing this super cool clip so that you could essentially hide it anywhere you wanted. And they just launched with the Misfit and the clip. And about 2 weeks in, he ran a survey through his campaign, and 30% of his funders said they wanted a necklace or a bracelet. So he started arguing with them, being like, no, you don't want to put it on your wrist. Like, you definitely want to clip it onto you. And then he realized he was arguing with his customers and put it up. Right there and then it said, you asked for it, here it is. And it was a necklace and a bracelet, and it sold out in minutes. And he created an entirely new revenue stream from that moment on. And now they partnered with people like Swarovski and Victoria's Secret, and accessories are a huge part of their revenue. So essentially, it's about, smiley people. Essentially, what you're trying to do is reduce your market risk. You want to find and build that audience, build that customer segment, figure out your customer segments and try and tap into them. And then you want to try and reduce execution risk by really nailing your product market fit. So price points, feature sets, customer segments, everything else. And that will enable you to do whatever you want to do in the future, which is raise money or get into retailers and essentially build a very successful, sustainable hardware business. And that's what we do all day long. These are some of my super smiley American counterparts in New York and San Francisco. I'm based in London, but I work with just hardware in Europe. So if you have a cool idea and you want some help bringing it to market, then please come and say hello.